Video.
Yeah, I would love your video.
It says unable to start video because
Okay,
the host has stopped it for some reason.
let's see. We're going to pause that. So we'll resume recording and we're going to rebroadcast. Here we go. We got it. We're ready. All right, it's preparing the live stream to Facebook.
Great.
All right, here we are. We're live. We're ready to go. Technical difficulties far behind us. Um, Good
Great to see
evening.
you.
It's good to see you again. I'm excited for this. I'm also excited for the Bomb Magazine interview coming out. It should be out sometime next week, as a matter of fact. So this will be a nice little pre-conversation to the interview.
Yeah,
So good
fantastic.
evening, Augustonians, and Happy New Year. Welcome to Lit Friday. If you are new, my name is Jessica Lene. I am the curator and host of Lit Friday. I'm also a poet and an art journalist. You can follow me on Instagram at hanginthere_kitty. We are looking forward to having you for our 2024 season. We have incredible Lit Friday guests lined up for you, including writers like Safia Sinclair, Aria D. Matthews, and Jerome Ellis, and many, many more. We're going to continue bringing in-depth conversations where we explore the impact of contemporary Black arts and literature on the current moment. January is a rich and busy month, so let's get started with getting your calendars together. On January 15th, we have Intermission, an artful happy hour with sounds by Selecta and hosting from the artist Kimos. January 19th to the 21st, we have our Waiting on Bated Breath Hooks and Phonics Festival with performances from geniuses such as Rhapsody, the Grammy-nominated spoken word artist Aja Monet, Slum Village, Jessica Caremore, and many, many amazing others. Get your tickets as soon as possible and come vibe with us. On January 24th, we are screening highlights from the 2023 Pittsburgh International Jazz Festival. This event is totally free, and you can tune in at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center Facebook page or at pittsburghjazzfest.org and on YouTube. And finally, we'll have another Lit Friday. We'll be featuring a one-on-one interview with the Grammy-nominated artist Aja Monet about her latest album, activism, and forthcoming publication, Florida Water. And now I have the blessing, the grand honor of introducing Tim Okamura, the solo artist of the exhibition Onna-Bugeisha, Warriors of Light. The incredible exhibition was curated by Carla Ferguson. It's currently on view at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center. I always tell this story. Tim's heard it a million times from me by now, but I first saw his work in 2012 at a Dexter Wimberly exhibition, The Box That Rocks, and I was amazed and overwhelmed and looking very closely. The gallery was dark at the time because I was walking through as a curatorial fellow at the Museum of Contemporary African Diaspora and Arts. And the literal relief of Tim's work made me think there was someone standing in the gallery until I flipped on the lights and saw that it was an incredible, amazing painting. So I can't wait to dig more into how you built this world through portraiture, and also your perspective on this idea of a continuous narrative represented through portraiture. Also, keep an eye out on my Instagram, again, at hanginthere_kitty. Tim's Instagram at Tim Okamura, Okamura, and the August Wilson African American Cultural Center social media for the release of the Bomb Magazine interview and an extended conversation. Now I'm going to read Tim's bio and embarrass him some more. Tim Okamura investigates identity, the urban environment, metaphor, and cultural iconography through painting. By combining an essentially realist approach to the figure with collage, spray paint, and mixed media, he juxtaposes the rawness and urgency of street art with academic ideals to create a visual language that acknowledges a traditional form of storytelling through portraiture while infusing the work with resonant contemporary motifs. Born in Edmonton in Canada, Okamura earned a BFA with distinction at the Alberta College of Art and Design in Calgary before moving to New York City to attend the School of Visual Arts in 1991. After graduating with an MFA in illustration as visual journalism in 1993, Okamura moved to Brooklyn, where he continues to live and work. A recipient of the 2004 Fellowship in Painting from the New York Foundation for the Arts, Tim Okamura was shortlisted by the Royal Surveyor of the Queen's Picture Collection for a commissioned portrait of the Queen of England in 2006 and has been selected 9 times to appear in the prestigious BP Portrait Award exhibition at the National Portrait Gallery in London. In 2012, the University of North Carolina hosted a retrospective exhibition of his work that focused on nearly a decade of production. Okamura's work was also featured at the Art Directors Club in New York the same year, followed by a solo show at National Arts Club alongside the works of Romare Bearden in 2014. He received an invitation to the White House in 2015 to honor artists whose work addresses issues of social justice, and received a letter of commendation from the Vice President of the United States, Joe Biden. His work was included in a traveling exhibition by the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery in 2016, and most recently, several of Okamura's works were featured prominently in the Still I Rise exhibition at the Massachusetts Museum of Contemporary Art in 2020. Okamura has exhibited extensively in galleries throughout the world, including the United States, Canada, Italy, Germany, Hong Kong, Japan, Ecuador, and Turkey, and is part of both private and public collections, such as the permanent collections of the Davis Museum at Wellesley College, the Jimenez Colon Museum, the Sonia Haynes Stone Center for Black Culture and History at the University of North Carolina, the Alberta Foundation for the Arts, the Toronto Congress Center, and Standard Chartered Bank in London. Thank you for returning to have another conversation with me. I guess my first question is just, part of our conversation. The exhibition is up, it's in the world. How do you feel? What are your post-show feelings? Now that the work is done and the pressure is off, how do you see the experience for you? How do you feel about the work? How do you feel about the work put in? Where are you?
Great opening question. Great to see you again. As I said, last time we spoke, things were still gestating and I was still building towards the opening of the show, which was November 9th at August Wilson Center. It was probably the most intense and fully life involved exhibition that I've ever done, actually. Everything else got pushed to the wayside so I could really focus in on the show. And I think part of the reason for that was the ambition in terms of scale of a lot of the pieces, also the ambition in terms of collaboration. I believe I had 7 or 8 collaborators, some of whom I did pieces with. Andrew Hendrick Ortiz built from scratch suits of samurai armor for the exhibition. Just so many really exciting things were a part of the outline for the show. And it really was an opportunity for me to push my boundaries. And like I said, stay in a really focused headspace for about 6 months prior to the opening of the show. We had a blast. November 9th. We were able to, very fortunately, is very blessed to have the Legacy Arts project involved. And so they brought some incredible dancers to the opening, as well as African drummers. My parents came. A lot of the collaborators came in from both North Carolina and New York. It was an opening that I think I'd always sort of dreamed of, to experience the vision coming to fruition was just overwhelming. Again, just very humbled and honored that I'd be given the opportunity by August Wilson Center. And For me, definitely a career highlight to this point.
So how did you calibrate all of the, because you say you had to focus, you had to push things to the side as an artist that has to, but we also discussed in the bomb interview, you're like, no, like you're very active, you kind of have a lot of pots going at once. So what did you do, just as a question of instruction, maybe for artists in the audience, like how did you handle the pressure of focusing in on such a large an incredible body of work?
Um, I mean, I had the bigger picture idea, had an outline, which Kimberly Jacobs from the museum saw on my wall. I had all the sketches of the paintings, all the titles, everything I wanted to do as kind of my daily guide. So as soon as I walked into the studio, I reminded myself of the big picture. But many points it was also just kind of focusing on bite-sized chunks and kind of taking it day by day and sort of having a plan of which 2 or 3 works I was going to sort of grind away at, for that particular day or for that particular week. A new experience for me with the scope and the ambition of the show for sure. But luckily I had a bit of a head start on some of the pieces, going back to the large group portrait, which is called Call to Arms of the Righteous Guardians. I actually started that in 2016, knowing that somewhere down the line this show idea I had would materialize. So there were a few things that had already been started. So that helped a lot, I think, in terms of just stabilizing my panic levels to some degree. But my work is very detail oriented. Every piece requires a lot of time and energy. So there were many points where I felt the clock ticking and it was getting kind of louder and louder, like like in the Alfred Hitchcock.
Or that Edgar Allan Poe short story,
Yeah,
what
the end game.
Telltale Heart
Yeah,
reaches
right. That's what
in the
that's
meeting, and you're
actually what
like,
I was.
oh.
Yeah,
So
that's what I was referring to.
in your bio, it mentions the academic. And when I hear that word as an art historian myself, I'm thinking about the trajectory from, right, like late 17th, early 18th century, Italian Baroque in particular, right? This approach to realism that kind of goes into the French Royal School, then to neoclassicism, and then we have photography, and then we really have a realism movement, a hyper-realist movement that follows like a realism moment in the modernist movement. And I'm wondering if when I read academic, that this is the trajectory of portraiture that you're combining with all of these other interdisciplinary ideas that kind of come from community. So my question is, what about your training has been transformed over a life living in community as an artist? What has your life in community done to really give you a specific approach to that academic training?
Yeah, I think the academic, yeah, the academic part certainly comes from college, my college experience. Really wanting to learn how to properly, first of all, use the medium of oil paint. Secondly, how do I render a likeness? And what are some of the, the centuries old rules in terms of process? All those kind of basic tools, I think, were something that I really wanted to learn to master, I guess, if you could say that. And then recognizing again, a lot of the historical context of figure painting, of realism, um, and how I could use those skills to create something contemporary. So it's like listening to the conversation that's gone on before you, um, seeing the subjects that were, discussed, if I can use that metaphor, and then say, okay, what am I going to add to the conversation that hasn't already been said before? And I think that's something that can be tricky with figurative work because there's just been so much exploration, and motive as well, for doing portraiture. In my case, I realized that I didn't want to just, focus on making, okay, this is a hyper realist, depiction of somebody, and that's where it ends. I wanted that to be, I would say that the core of my image making, or the backbone of it, but also allowing space for, a lot of my like contemporary influences to come into play. And not just visual, but like music, spiritual, political, and figuring out ways to sort of symbolize those things as well. So I think throughout my career, I've experimented, it's always been the figure and portraiture, but collage has come into play. There've been graffiti heavy paintings that were, um, you know, created over a span of many years as well. Abstract concerns. And last time we spoke, you mentioned like looking at some of the portraiture and seeing areas of micro abstraction, which I love. So I think for me, it's always been about balance. Blame my Libra-ness for that, but wanting to, have to elicit, I think, a strong emotional reaction from the viewer engaging with the figure, but having this room for these other elements to come in to support the I think the kind of core message behind the portrait, and also elements to be explored over repeated viewings. And I think that that's something that's also been a big concern with the work, is thinking about it hanging in a collector's home for, let's say, 10 years. And I've had people have viewed the work, whether it's collectors or public collections, come and say, like, I just saw something the other day. I've had this painting, hanging for many years, and I saw you wrote this little word in the corner, or I focused on this particular area and was just looking at the color layering there. So it's not just like I think some work is almost the equivalent of like a one-liner. Like when I go to art fairs and I see these kind of very quick read paintings, and I, not that they're not good and important pieces, but for me, I'm searching for more. And that's something that I've always wanted to infuse in my work, is these other layers, these other levels, and of meaning, and also just of technical experimentation. So I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but I think that it's always been portraiture plus whatever that other thing is going to be. There's always room for that for me, and that's been a very important component for me, and keeps me excited.
No, your work definitely makes me think about like the rebirth of poetry, right? Like the resurrection of it from its incredibly classed and specific origins, right? As being an opportunity, an asset for certain families in Renaissance Europe during the time, and even late medieval, to kind of associate themselves with symbolism that reflect their class, their location, their wealth, etc., their gender, and how, as that's kind of exploded in the late 19th century, it ends up falling away. There's this fight between the figurative and the abstract. And then there are these artists that have emerged in the 2000s, such as yourself. Kehinde Wiley can be included in this as well, that are thinking about portraiture as a consistent narrative, and thinking about the figure as almost being very easy to imagine in motion, right? Being very easy to imagine as being caught mid-step, and having the viewer feel extremely immersed in the kind of volatile juxtaposition of colors and text and word, and thinking about how a form can have an audience member or a viewer give a certain assumption of what's going on, but to adorn the form with your own technique in your own perspective enlivens the figure itself. So someone go write that essay, and someone go write that essay. I want to know, I know, but would like for the audience to kind of hear again and have preserved here the concept of the Onna-Bugeisha, how you came to the concept as an individual, and then how that concept in your imagination transfers to imagery of Black women and women of color.
Yeah, well, it kind of ties into what you just said, about um, the function of portraiture, even, going back to when it was purely commissioned by, I guess you could say royalty, or by the church, and then down to like to nobility, where it was a status symbol and only the wealthy could afford portraiture, to where that started to break down, with I guess you could say the late 19th century, and you got artists like Toulouse-Lautrec that would go to the bar and paint, dancers that he saw, or, and so then it started to break down from this idea of like you would only see paintings of the wealthy who commissioned those paintings of themselves, to artists actually going out and proactively painting and drawing the people that they were interested in and wanted to paint. And obviously in this day and age, that's something that we're now used to. But yeah, I think when I was, focused on trying to learn the skill set throughout school, I was also, like, even back in college, very interested in, I guess, my place in the world. How did I come to have this, amazing, diverse group of best friends? A lot of times when you're, working and trying to learn, and your best models are your friends. So I grew up like painting and drawing my friends, without attaching a lot of significance at that time, because my brain just wasn't there yet, to realize, how that could be interpreted, and what that meant. But I think once I got, into grad school, and, moved to New York City, and was now like in the place where I needed to be in terms of culture, and again, the diversity. And in the early 90s, was, reading more and educating myself more about, the history of America, coming from Canada, and very particularly, the plight of like the history of Black folks in America. So I was reading, the autobiography of Malcolm X, as a starting point, and came across a quote, saying the most disrespected person in America is the Black woman. And sorry, I have certain things that just trigger so much emotion, but I realized then that there could be a real purpose to the subjects I selected in terms of portraiture. I um, hadn't seen portraits of women of color in the museums, and as much as I was excited to go look at, let's say, Rembrandt or Caravaggio at the Met, um, it did occur to me, after several visits, I'm like, wait a minute, I've only seen paintings of mostly Caucasian males. um, and I found that resonated with me as well. And I thought to myself, it was and that's the thing I think I have to explain. It wasn't so planned, like, hey, I'm going to do this specific thing in terms of choosing this path. There was an organic aspect to it. I guess what I'm trying to say, there was an organic part of it because I was already there. And then the consciousness and the awareness helped to sharpen my focus, I guess is what I could say. And I do remember a point where I said, I think for a little while right now, I'm going to focus on painting women of color, and primarily Black women, and, friends and associates and friends of friends. And once I started down that path, I just realized how much work needed to be done, and how important it was feeling to me to continue to make this work. Um, and and I've done hundreds of paintings of, representing women of color. And at the same time, there were thoughts about pushing beyond simply portraiture, I did a series on boxing called Round Zero, which was a collaboration with a few other artists back in 2013. And that is where I started to realize, hey, there can be a narrative that can also, or that can sort of take the storytelling aspect to the next level, because I always feel that a portrait is telling a story. It's a story of the individual and wanting to celebrate them while at the same time pointing to um, the metaphor for metaphors for the greater human experience, that we all share. But I thought there's also some joy to be had in representing the women as boxers, and obviously talking about the fight, the struggle, the courage, the warrior spirit. And once I sort of felt like I'd satisfied that ambition with the boxing, I was like, I think this can go further. And that's where the samurai idea started to come into play. And that was informed by me also, considering my own, relationship in terms of identity, being Japanese Canadian. My father, hadn't talked a lot about his experience being in a Japanese internment camp in World War II, and that whole side of the family. And I started to dig into that a little bit, and now it feels like it's this fusion of like my personal history, my great concerns with representation and equality, and finding this narrative in the Onna-Bugeisha that seems to be drawing everything together and tying it together in a way that is exciting for me thematically, and technically. And I feel like I've just started to scratch the surface. As I said at the opening of Onna-Bugeisha, what a great, perfect forum to sort of really introduce the Onna-Bugeisha female samurai series in a really official way. And so, yeah, it just seemed kind of like a natural evolution. And now I've realized with this series that it's taking place in an alternate reality, which very closely mirrors our own. There's also a real heightening of my political awareness and involvement, and that's come into the series as well. So it feels very holistic. It's making a lot of sense to me right now. I feel really happy with the first chapter, which is on display, at the August Wilson Center. And I just feel like, again, there's just so much more to be said, and so many more stories to be told through this engine, this narrative engine.
There are so many ways that the exhibition, probably unintentional in its timing, in its subject matter and its narrative, is really resonating with, I think, the American public learning about the capacities, brilliant and harmful, of its government, right? And thinking about how we're so used to, in our American history, having one messianic figure to kind of say they did this, right? But when we look at the Black Panther movement or the Black Lives Matter movement, what we learn is that there's no great change without a diversity of people coming together and kind of pushing forward and making a commitment to justice-based values. And the work, it's very much represented in the work, which is harrowing, even in some of its titles, right? Because you're not only representing, women winning these figures, these women winning the battles, you're also showing them in the struggle in a way that is gentle and heroic together. And I know it's a strange question, maybe something we could think about together, but I wondered how you managed to have the effect of the heroic and the gentle and vulnerable together. Because I think that in the public imagination, especially, those three things are never associated with Black women together: a vulnerability, a gentleness, and a kind of courageousness or a strength, and having these things being together in this nuanced way that becomes expressed in each individual based on their life experience. So how do you attain this balance of, you know, in your portraiture of this gentleness and this extreme vulnerability with the heroism?
Yeah, I love that observation, and it is something that, you know, I've hoped to strive for in the work. Is, I think, you know, there's certain signals, right, about what you're experiencing with armor. You know, they're wearing samurai armor, they have katanas and other weapons, they're standing in very um kind of statuesque, heroic poses in many instances. But at the same time, I also wanted to honor, you know, their female identity, um, femininity, and as you said, there is some vulnerability. I think that in the concept, I mean, these warriors are, they're heroes, but they're not invulnerable. They can, you know, be injured, they can be killed, um, and many have sacrificed, you know, along the way. And there's an installation room as part of the exhibition, that's called the Armory Room, and the idea behind that is it's the place where the Onna-Bugeisha go to like don their battle gear and grab their weapons, but there are also some armors that are tributes to fallen warriors that have, you know, were founders of the movement. So there's an acknowledgement of that as well. But I think that there's also, I think there's some idealism as well, because it's, in my mind, it's sort of this chapter one. You know, the group portrait again is it's call to arms, and I think that's kind of almost like a subtext of the entire show. This is a call to arms. We're in a very um, fragile, fraught time right now, and if we, you know, now is the time where we have to come together to take action. And it reminded me a little bit of some Civil War pictures where you would see soldiers who had their brand new uniforms on, their new rifle, and they were like ready to go off to war without fully understanding the horrors of war. So there was this, you know, image of them that was like these gentlemen that were ready to go battle, you know, and later you would see them return, and, you know, in some cases broken, if they did return at all, or miss, you know, leaving behind parts of themselves on the battlefield, haggard, you know. So um, I think that next step is coming, with the series as well, where you're going to see more of, there are going to be casualties and sacrifice, to an even greater extent. But I think there are a lot of, again, a lot of different layers to like who these women are and to who these warriors are, and there's going to be a lot of different backstories that I'm going to kind of continue to sort of flesh out. But I love what you said, because it's telling me that you're seeing them as multidimensional characters, and that's what I wanted to try to depict.
My next question is about the curator artist collaborative process. And Carla is in the room. And so if she's available, then she's more than welcome to chime in. But of course, you've worked with curators before, but this is a really, really extensive project. And you and Carla were working, like hammering out this idea, this thing together. And so, how was this unlike any experience you've had with a curator before? And how did that help you kind of feel that you could bring the entirety of this alternate world to fruition?
Well, you know, Carla and I have a long history. In fact, referencing the Round Zero series, there is a large painting, I believe it's 13 women depicted as boxers, and it's a painting called The Fight Club, and still one of my all-time favorite pieces. And Carla actually has that as part of her collection. So she's understood, I think, the woman warrior idea for quite some time now. And I even, back at the time when we first started working together, when she was displaying my work, in her gallery at the time, I had spoken about the samurai idea. So this has been gestating for a long time. She had seen a few earlier pieces, and I think, just the enthusiasm for that work was sort of fuel for me. I was very focused. I knew what I wanted to do. It's kind of like, the old school like steam powered train or whatever going down the track, and I would check in with Carla, and she just, here's more coal, keep shoveling that, just keep going. So I think it was a lot of support. I would bounce a few ideas off of her, and she would just a lot of positive feedback. Just made me feel like I was on the right track to stay on the train analogy. I don't think there was any points where there was any friction or anything like that, or any disagreements about what was going on. I think it was just she was a great sounding board, and everything. There's just a nice synergy there. So it came together quite smoothly, I think.
And more on collaboration, you mentioned, and I saw on the wall labels that there are a number of collaborations in several of the paintings. And so, even in the way portraiture is taught, or the artist's life is taught, there's always one canvas, one artist, and no one touches your canvas. Especially now that the market plays such a huge role in who gets to continue producing and who doesn't, based on having a supported artist life. And so I wanted you to say more about the collaborations, when they came in. Tell us about some of the artists you collaborated with and what you learned from the collaborative process in the two-dimensional space.
Yeah, I mean, I've always loved the idea. I mean, because most of the work, that an artist does is in solitude, I mean, with the exception of, some artists that are having whole teams of people fabricate their work, let's say, but most of the time, it's spent in solitude. I think, back in the days when I was doing artwork that was being used in films, I would love going to the set, showing up with my work and being a part of this team for a while, and vibing off of that. And then ultimately I got to leave when I wanted to, and the crew the crew had to stay. But I love that feeling of it, of breaking out of that kind of solo experience and feeling like I'm it was part of a team, and working with other people in the past on a few collaborative pieces where I had a residency at Redbird Studio in Gansevoort Street by the Whitney back in 2016, and one of the things the gallerist wanted to do was involve the community. And so I had an idea to paint a figure in the center of a huge canvas, to stencil a word like, to tell the truth, and then give people markers and have an event, and give them the opportunity to write their name, or write a poem, or write a statement, or do a drawing. And I just love the results of all these different ideas, all these different personalities contributing to a piece. And then afterwards I would take it and work on it some more and sort of tie it all together. So collaboration has been something I've always vibed with, and again had the latitude for this show to say, I want to bring in some other artists, and see what we can come up with to break me out of my comfort zone a little bit, to tap into the incredible skill sets that they had, and the perspectives that they had. And also, just on a conceptual level, realizing that, just my inclusion, as an exhibitor at the August Wilson African American Cultural Center, as a Japanese Canadian artist, was a truly special and unique thing in and of itself, and a great statement about community and about bridging cultural gaps, through artwork. And so I think me being given that opportunity I wanted to expand on that and say, let me bring in this diverse group of collaborators from different communities, and from Gordon Holiday, who's up and coming young Black designer from North Carolina, Beverly Smith, who's retired school teacher who makes these awesome quilts, and having her, and she's like a generation ahead of me, so having her voice, to give me some wisdom, to Andrew Hendrick Ortiz, who's like a samurai buff, like just knows more about Japan and samurai than I do, as a young Black artist living in Orange County, California, to the two tattoo artists slash painters, Woods, who worked on the piece with Tyra with the snakes. Why am I blanking on the title of it right now? But he brought in his expertise as somebody that also knows Japanese motifs, and then Rich Muller, who worked with me on the portrait of Yaya, the demon slayer, and him drawing the demons. So it pointed to allyship, uh, community collaboration, conversation, between me and the other artists, and between the works created by all these other personalities as well. I think it made a very uh, rich tapestry, of voices, and that was something that I thought would be an excellent conceptual aspect to bring into the show at the museum, and talk about our connectivity.
I love it. I love it. I also enjoyed you sharing about the large scale canvas and having the community come in and contribute to a prompt, right? An image text prompt, and thinking about how that is what kind of gives a painting, moves the painting from an object to a subject, having some narrative, like some subjectivity, which I think is really beautiful and really radical. um, I wanted to also think ask another question about how you negotiated bridging the gap between traditional two-dimensional painting and also like sharing the canvas. Like, what were the conversations like? What was the interaction like? What was it like to kind of draw on the same piece of paper, like four hands, right? And what did you learn from that that you didn't know before?
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, it was a different experience with every collaborator. In some cases, like Woods is just so proficient, fast, just gets it down, no problem. Like, it was just, I was like, do your thing, man, and then I'll come in, and like, I was like, you're kind of doing a lot of heavy lifting on this. Um, on some of the other pieces, like the Guardian's Embrace is actually a 16-foot tall kimono, which is suspended from the ceiling in the gallery. Major, like, logistical, like, how are we going to do this piece? It's sewn together out of burro cloth, which is a sort of a Japanese fabric type that's made out of scraps of cotton, like, basically early denim materials that were sewn together in a very patchwork kind of way, and the whole kimono is made out of that. So that was like, I didn't know how I was going to do that, and that's the piece I did with Gordon Holiday. And he is a designer who, again, has been highly influenced by Japanese culture, and by samurai in particular, and made has made these beautiful, like, custom kimonos that are meant to be worn in a contemporary setting. So I was like, okay, you've made some like wearable kimonos. Can we make this giant one together? That was a total exploration of like the outer limits of what I thought I was capable of, because that there was aspects of clothing design in that. So I learned a lot from Gordon. That's probably one of the pieces where I learned the most about how these things are put together. Um, And I think a piece, and also the piece with Beverly Smith, which, she's done these hanging quilts, so it is a quilt. I sent her an element, which was a painted warrior, and she did a lot of heavy lifting on that one and sewed it on and added all these other elements. The figure that she contributed was of her aunt, who was kind of a civil rights activist and sort of freedom fighter in her own right. And that painting is called Unchained Courage. And so that was a lot of like, this is kind of a Beverly Smith piece, and I had the honor of contributing to it. But I think one piece where there was really a lot of, it was quite balanced, and again, it was two Libras working on it, was the piece I did with Wildcat Ebony Brown called the prodigious Wildcat Ebony Brown. And her figure is hung really high up on the wall. The idea of the giant kimono, the 16-foot tall kimono, is that one of the warriors had the ability to grow in size before she was running into battle. And in that particular case, she got struck down, and kind of almost similar to the Star Wars trope of Obi-Wan Kenobi, the only thing left behind was this giant kimono. So it's kind of this revered artifact. But I thought that she had a sister, in the form of Wildcat Ebony Brown, who could also grow, not quite as tall, but similarly could grow in size, and therefore, like, her painting is hung about 13 feet up. And we had the idea that she was a medicine woman. And so hanging from her dress, which again is made out of the burro cloth, are all these medicine pouches. And those ideas about the medicine pouches, that came from Ebony. She has Seminole Native heritage, so she was bringing in that. She's also from a town that was called Wildcat, and that's why everybody from that town has the prefix Wildcat as part of their name. And so she was bringing a lot of her personal story into that. Her grandmother raised peacocks, so there's peacock feathers radiating out from her hair. There's ideas about shaman and medicine woman, and she cut out those letters, and a lot of those things came together in the museum itself, because we were working right up to the day of the show. But Ebony brought the energy and brought the goods, and that was, it was me learning about her personal history, her family experience, her experience being African American and Native American, what that juxtaposition meant to her, and then taking those ideas and concepts and saying to ourselves, okay, how can we now translate this into a visual work, that will emanate, some of those ideas, and will capture some of that energy. So again, so many aspects of the collaborations, educational and enlightening for myself. So many points in time where, you had the chills and got emotional. And I think, her and I embraced at one point, tearfully, as like we sort of knew we had hit the finish line on this piece, because we had all the plans, but hadn't actually assembled it until it was in the museum itself. Really gratifying experience. And I think that, I'm pretty sure, like, all the artists felt similar to me in that we accomplished something new and unique and important.
It's interesting as well because on the African American side of thing, as Edward Glissant says, the Africa, the Africans in the Americas is like Africa represented outside of the continent, right? But thinking about gree and warrior amulets as well. So there are often, like, from different parts of West Africa, these shirts that have these amulets, gree all over them, and inside of them are these pieces of paper that have Arabic text from Islam written on them, and then
Mm-hmm.
it's scrubbed off and put back in and wrapped up and attached to the shirt that's worn by the warrior to protect them in battle. So it's interesting to hear about both of those traditions on both sides of Ebony's, to know that and hear about her experience with that as a representative, her Native American Seminole history on that side. It's
Yes.
powerful, right? To be able to have this kind of like representation, juxtaposition of images and things. I'm going to shift gears and go back kind of to the beginning because you mentioned music. And I'm always very curious, even from the last time we talked, you mentioned some artists to me that I went and looked up. Now they're like in my like big playlist. And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of picking your brain for my own personal gain. But there we spoke about the work mimicking sampling, right? Which is this kind of collaborative process, either between like producers or producers and the records that they're just kind of, picking and exploring and kind of really thinking about the sonic world of another artist and how they can enter it. And so I wanted to know about how music is a part of your process for this exhibition in particular. Were you listening to anything on repeat that kept you going or kept you in the correct headspace while you were doing this? What was it? And were you have a history, you used to run a hip hop radio show in Canada, right? When you were in
Yeah.
college. And so how did music kind of form one of the organs or nervous systems of your process for the show?
Yeah, well, I had a hip hop show, which was the only hip hop show at that time in the late '80s, early '90s in Calgary. So that was an incredible experience. I think I mentioned to you, I had artists like Will Smith and Ice-T on my show, and they would show up and be like, "You're the guy doing the hip hop show," like, and they'd have to kind of wrap their head around that. But I also had an alternative rock show, and there was so much time spent in the studio that it did become this deep dive into my musical history. I was listening to like, classic like golden era hip hop. I was listening to old classic rock, but also listening to like albums of bands that when I was in bands in the '90s, songs that we used to cover. Richard Muller, again, who worked on Yaya the Demon Slayer with me, was kind of my DJ for a lot of that because he was in the studio with me for a couple of months. And he's like, "Hey, remember this T?" And he would like, put on an old Firehose record, or he would be like, "Hey, like let's listen to the Doobie Brothers now," or let's listen to this. I mean, the magic of YouTube comes into play because then it's like, wow, you can access all these archives of concerts of all these artists that you've always loved but never seen these performances before. So it was everything, to be honest. But feeling like just so, I don't know, enriched by like all the history and memories and everything that music does to you, emotionally. Uh, you know, what's the word when you're um, having these flashbacks to, I don't know why I'm forgetting the word, but when you just feel it's just hitting these, it's bringing up these memories, and I think that was a big part of the process. And other times where it was just like, let's put on some music for energy. Let's listen to Idols, this band that I love out of England, or let's listen to Turnstile out of Baltimore. Just let's rock out for a while. And I think that I do tend to do that. If a passage of the painting requires more energy, and if I'm standing up and there are more abstract brush moves, I think the music tends to get a little more charged up. If it is that kind of, you know, sit down and detail work, maybe I'm going to listen to like a John Coltrane record or something and get into that sort of vibey headspace. So the music seems to match the painting. Sometimes if the music slipped into something, maybe the painting would get a little more loosey goosey and energized unexpectedly. But yeah, it was yeah, very emotional experience on every level. Especially with the collaborators, the music, the ambition of the work, and the emotional content of what I was trying to accomplish. So yeah, I think after the opening, you asked me in the very beginning, I definitely like kind of fell out for a little while because it was just such a crescendo. It was such a build up to this show, and I was just drained on every level, like emotionally, physically, just psychologically. I just wanted to just lie in the middle of a giant, empty room and not think, not, just breathe. And so that's kind of what I've been doing on to some degree the last couple of months. But I'm excited though, because I should mention also on the calendar, February 15th, and you did mention that there's a great event happening that it's also the closing reception for Onna-Bugeisha is happening February 15th at August Wilson Center. So that's going to be a huge night. We're hoping to get catalogs done for that night, catalogs of the exhibition for February 15th. And I'm also going to be releasing a limited edition print of Ebony Obsidian, the Unbreakable on February 15th as well. And we'll have prints available at the show. So I had to squeeze in my plug there at the very end. So I know we're getting close to time.
No, no. My last question is actually about having you speak to the special friendships that you have with the women who are a part of this world. I think it's like important for us to understand that, Ebony is a close friend of yours, right? And so that does add an energy to the detail. It's not only about astute representation, right? It's about capturing an energy, capturing the essence of someone. And so I just wanted to give you an opportunity to speak to some of those friendships and, like shout out like you did your collaborators, because there
Yeah.
wouldn't be, right? This if there was not their willingness to sit for
Yeah.
hours and to be involved in this alternate universe.
100%. Yeah. And that is another aspect of collaboration as well, with the models who, graciously came to sit and inspire. And in the case, in the case of Ebony Obsidian and Yaya DaCosta, where they have an acting background, they were really able to inhabit the character and bring that full commitment and in some ways give some ideas to me. Yeah, it's so blessed to have the support of all the people that posed for me and the enthusiasm to be a part of the project, the understanding of what I was trying to accomplish, the spirit of Onna-Bugeisha, to have them come in and really inhabit that space and embrace it and understand, like, woman warrior, understand the core meanings of struggle and fight and courage and sacrifice and vulnerability. I think there was just a great synergy all the way around. Some longtime friends posed for me, some new friends, and just a real great variety, generationally as well, to some degree. So a huge important part of the work. I mean, the work is about depicting human beings in a state of grace, in a state of struggle, in a state of uh, um, you know evolution, and I think that I'm also very fortunate that there's some law of the universe connectivity that seems to happen where I get linked with the right people for the right paintings. They come into my life at the right time, or they've been in my life and then just just happen to be the perfect person to pose for a concept. So yeah, I think that's where the magic happens, really, is being on that wavelength where you're attracting that collaborative energy, and that's very reassuring to me and affirming that I'm on, like I said, I'm on the right path.
Thank you so much for your creativity, your vulnerability, your drive to share and collaborate, and your generosity of thought. Please, if you can run as fast as you can to go see the exhibition, go see Onna-Bugeisha Warriors of Light as soon as possible. Join Tim and the August Wilson African American Cultural Center team for the closing reception on February 15th. Get your catalog, get your print, take the pictures, share them on your social media so everybody can see this brilliant work that did not get to see it. Share this interview so that everyone can hear Tim's brilliant ideas and hear the brilliant history of how these paintings came to be. A humongous thank you to Janice Bond, a huge thank you to Kimberly, a huge thank you to Carla Ferguson, and all the thank yous to you, Tim. You're truly like the best. I really
Thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much. I'm going to shout out Janice Burley as well from
Janice Burley
yeah,
Wilson,
yeah.
captain of the ship.
She was at the genesis of all this. Thank you so much. You're officially my new favorite interviewer. That's it. Any future interviews, I'm going to request Jessica Lene to to conduct it. I really appreciate your thoughtfulness and insight and great questions. And thank you for giving me this forum to share.
No, appreciation all around. Everyone have beautiful weekends. If you're in the inclement weather, stay inside.
Thank you.